I'm live now? Oh, okay. You're starting to record. Okay, I guess we're ready. Okay, hi everyone. My name's Jamie Odom. I am the BRB Historical Officer, and I'm up here in Pennsylvania at Fort Necessity. And I'm actually down a mile away from Fort Necessity. This is the highway, and it's about a mile up the road. And Major General Braddock, the British general of the Coldstream Guards that we're going to talk about today, he has his own park a mile down the road, and we're going to talk about him. Something that was interesting when I first got up here is they have a Braddock restaurant, which is really cool. You can see you have his portrait. It's a restaurant, bar, and inn, but since I've been here the last day and a half, it looks like it's a biker bar with probably good country cooking. I haven't tried it out yet. Good bikers. They look like they're probably just veterans or something like that. So anyway, we're gonna get started. I don't want to take up all Zoom time. So we're gonna walk down here to this park. So a little background information first. So I went up to Fort Necessity yesterday, and I learned a little more about Braddock and General Washington. So General Washington, when he first started out, he had a battle at Fort Necessity. But first of all, there was a battle before Fort Necessity, and it was basically the English and the French, the British and the French were obviously they were trying to they were battling for land and everything. There was a big trade war, and the French were on the English portion of the land, so the English said. So so they sent George Washington out. He was a lieutenant. I think he was a lieutenant to go and scout the area. They sent out a squad with him. He was in the colonial militia, so he was part of the British. He was part of the British Army and the colonial militia. And they went out with a squad, and they ambushed some French soldiers. And some people believe, the American historians believe that George Washington may have started the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War. So after that, they win and they come up here, and George Washington builds Fort Necessity. So, and it's just like right over there. So once he's done with Fort Necessity, the French come back because they want revenge, and they overwhelm him. He doesn't have enough people. They overwhelm him. He surrenders, and because of this, the British back in London, they say, you know what, we need somebody with some experience. This really isn't working out. So they appoint the first commander-in-chief of the 13 colonies, which is Major General Braddock. The reason why I find that fascinating, commander-in-chief, because basically we call our president the commander-in-chief, and I think that George Washington probably brought that term over to the presidential Oval Office, and U.S. Army military people call the president the commander-in-chief. So there were two British commander-in-chiefs, and then obviously George Washington was our first commander-in-chief, but Braddock was also a first commander-in-chief. Anyway, so here we go. This is Braddock Unit Fort Necessity National Battlefield. And so anyway, they have Braddock come down with 2,400, something like 2,400 soldiers, British soldiers, and they put him in charge of all the colonial forces in the 13 colonies, and they tell him to go take Fort de Coutts, which the French are in charge of. And so he gets Washington together. Washington is his aide de camp, and they actually have a pretty good friendship together. Not as much of a friendship can be, being an officer, being, under him. And so Braddock kind of becomes Washington's mentor. And he actually does tell Washington, a lot of American historians say he tells Washington wanted to be an officer in the British Army, and he was kind of down from that. He was considered an officer, but not quite. He wasn't quite given all the perks of a British officer. So Braddock was going to make him an officer. That's what he told me. Anyway, so here is the here's the plaque on this highway. General Edward Braddock was buried here in 1755 after his death. Beside the grave, which names were moved in 1804, and the trace of the Braddock Road may be seen from here. Okay, so moving on. So when Braddock, so I was telling you guys, they send Braddock down here, and with his 2,400 men, and he gets halfway to Fort Decoons, and he's ambushed by the French and the Indians. And the Indians scalp a lot of British soldiers, American colonial militia, and so Braddock is shot off his horse 4 times during this, very heroic. And 3 days after, so they put him, George Washington puts him in a wagon. 3 days later, Braddock dies, and he hands over his sash, his battle sash, officer sash to George Washington, which means he's told him to take command. So he turns over that sash, and another part of this that's not talked about at this part is the fact that this sash has been passed down to American generals over the next 200 years, like, you know, your prominent American generals. And then it gets to President Taylor. President Taylor holds on to the sash, and he actually dies his first year in office. They're not sure why he died, but then he gives his sash to his daughter, Braddock's sash to his daughter. His daughter holds on to it. The Coldstream Guards actually asked for the sash to be returned to England, but it's an emotional attachment to his daughter, and she won't let go of it. So what the U.S. government steps in about 10 years later, because Coldstream Guards are still asking for the sash, and they create this monument. So they create the monument, and they invite the Coldstream Guards here in 1913, and they have a ceremony. And there are about 5,000 people, if you can think of it. Over there on those hills, there are about 5,000 people that gather right here. And you have the Coldstream Guards, the mayor, and some other people, and they do a ceremony commemorating Braddock. So this is like one of the plaques here. You can see this is Braddock. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this to you. Before the Europeans, only Indian trails led through virgin forests that once stretched beyond the horizon. Okay, in 1755, Major General Edward Braddock, British Army, widened Washington's road. So let's see here. Okay, about 1750, Nemacolin, a Delaware Indian, blazed a trail past here for the Ohio Company. 4 years later, Virginia militia, under Lieutenant Colonel George Washington, cut a narrow road through this wilderness from present-day Cumberland, Maryland, to beyond Fort Necessity. So in 1755, Major General Edward Braddock, British Army, widened Washington's road and extended it to the Monongahela River, which is actually the name of this battle. Braddock's road was an amazing engineering feat. Hundreds of men cut a 12-foot wide swath through the forest for Braddock's 2,400 soldiers, 13 cannons, about 100 wagons, and a herd of cattle. After the French and Indian War, this road became a main route west until the adjacent National Road reached the Ohio River in 1818. Major General Braddock averaged 3 miles per day in 1755 as advance squads cut a road through virgin hardwood forest ahead of 2,400 British soldiers. So maybe they shouldn't have been building this road while trying to defeat the French. But that is something else he's known for. It's really amazing. It's awesome. So we're gonna walk up to the monument. It's nice and pretty out here. They keep it all pretty clean. They gated this monument a long time ago, so not many people are gonna try and take it down. It's pretty secure for now anyway. So there's like there's about 3 plaques on here. Basically, they talk about that 44th Regiment I was talking about. So Major General Braddock, in command of the 44th and 48th Regiments of English regulars, was mortally wounded in an engagement with the French and Indians under the command of Captain Bahu at the Battle of Monongahela. That's the captain. That's the French captain that I can't pronounce. Within 10 miles of Fort de Coutts. Now Pittsburgh, July 9, 1755. He was borne back with the retreating army to the old Orchard Camp, about 1/4 a mile west of this park. So also, they got another plaque. This monument was erected and dedicated to memory of Major General Edward Braddock, Memorial Association of Fayetteville County. And these are the people that, so I read it's like 15,000 tons or something like that. I can't remember, 10,000 ton monument. These are the people that contributed to it. And the best part, the Coldstream Guards put this up. I don't know if you can see it. This bronze tablet was erected and dedicated to the memory of Major General Edward Braddock by the officers of his old regiment, the Coldstream Guards of England, October 15th, 1913. And you can see the Coldstream Guard. I'll take pictures. You can see the Coldstream Guard symbol right there in the crown. So that's pretty cool. So that's that. Now we're not done though, because that's where they moved Braddock's remains after they found them. So we're gonna go down here where he actually died. So this is a part where people say that they've seen ghosts, and this is on the 10 most America's haunted list, which really freaked me out with Mike not here. But it's okay. I was here yesterday, and it's not so bad. And there were some people earlier here, so that was really cool. But we're gonna go down here. Oh, something that I learned. So Braddock was buried down here, and Washington buried him buried him in the road so that the Indians wouldn't scalp him. The Indians that were working for the French would not scalp him. And so they had the soldiers walk over where he was buried. So it would just look like no one was buried there. And Washington forgot. So I read this earlier today. Washington forgot where he buried Braddock, and he came down here looking, never to find him. And then in 1804, some construction workers were working on this road, and they found his remains. So that's good. So this tablet marks the spot where Major General Edward Braddock was buried, July 14, 1755. His remains were removed in 1804 to the site of the present monument, which is up there. We've already been to. So I'll just show you this. So this is a creepy woodline area. So I guess they just would have come from that direction. And they came from, I read this last night because I was a little confused on where they started, but they started in Winchester, Virginia. So they had marched quite a ways. And it was just down through there. I actually got nicked by this bush, so I actually bled a little bit today. So yeah, it got me. But yeah, here's a little river. And I guess if you went up like, I don't know, probably about 20 miles, there would be, obviously they found Braddock, but you're talking about hundreds of British and colonial soldiers who died, and they're probably under the ground up there. So that probably is, there's probably ghosts. It probably is ghosts. So anyway, we're done with that. So if you want to, you can, I can turn it back over to you guys. I am going to go get the wreath and lay it on the monument that reads from the Coldstream Guards BRB. And I can answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, so if anybody's got any questions, can you raise your hand? Okay, Peter, let me, if you want to unmute yourself.
Right. Good evening, Jeremy.
Good evening.
Good evening. From the video that we're looking at, it's obviously back end of season, weather-wise and plant-wise, and therefore visibility distance-wise is not too bad. You've got pretty good vision through all the trees.
Yeah, it's true.
What would it have been like at the time of the battles?
You just reminded me about something. So I found out yesterday, because there's so much to the Braddock and like that story, but he left in April 9th, a day from now. He left from Winchester, Virginia on April 9th. That's what they say. And he made it. The battle started in July, so that's a long way to March. So, of course, April right now, I mean, it's 70 degrees right now. It's pretty nice here today. I don't know if it would have been this warm back then in April. Probably so. I mean, the weather comes and goes. Probably 65 degrees. It's usually pretty windy and chilly and it's very windy here. I've been here before, and not at this particular area, but in New England, and it's really windy. Almost failed my PT test because of it. But yeah. So, and then July it'd be really hot. So when he died, he died on July 13th, I believe, and so it would have been really, really hot and miserable for all of them.
So from when you basically, in terms of regards to being wounded and then not basically dying, he was basically field hospitalized for quite a bit of time then, really.
Yeah. I mean, he was about 3 days. So it was 3 days. So he was wounded. He was probably wounded about 20, 30 miles from here. And they put him in a wagon and they brought him down here. They got this far and he died here at that point. And that's when they buried him. George Washington actually did a whole service and everything. And they have somebody did a painting of it. So yeah. Yeah, so he's held on for a long time, and I believe he was shot several times.
So anybody else got any more questions? Jim, let me, there you go.
Yes, you said George Washington wasn't an officer, is that right?
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing. It's kind of confusing. So he was a colonial officer, but the colonial officership didn't give him the perks like as a British officer. I'm trying to think of a way to compare it to today. And I know just being a reserve officer, just being a National Guard officer, you're not respected as much as being on active duty. And I guess if you times that times 3, that's probably the way he was treated. So he was treated like they wanted him to go out and do all this crazy stuff as an officer of the colonial troops, but he wouldn't have been able to be put in charge of like your regular Coldstream Guard troops. Maybe every now and then if needed, but they wouldn't trust him with that, and that upset him. And he was trying to get that commission, and they wouldn't give it to him. So that was like one of his obviously disgruntled issues with the British Army. So it was just like he was a colonial officer. I guess, I mean, the only way I could explain it is probably like a reserve officer. Kind of you're doing a lot of the same things, but you're just not given the respect, and you don't have as many perks. That's true for me in the National Guard. There are things that active duty officers can do that I cannot, because I just don't have that power. I don't have that administrative power.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any more questions? Okay, Ron.
What is the present location of the sash?
Oh, it's at Mount Vernon in Virginia. So it's at where George Washington Estate was, and now it's been turned in. So when I was back here in 2019, when I was doing my public affairs school, I went to Mount Vernon, but I didn't even know the sash existed. This is before I knew the sash existed, or Braddock for that matter. And but I went there to look around and learn more about Washington. And yeah, so they've turned it into basically a museum for George Washington, and it talks about when he was younger. Talks about when he was younger and he was a surveyor, and then when he was in the colonial militia and some of the things that he did. Talks a little bit about Fort Necessity, but not a whole lot. I wasn't really putting two and two together back then. And just all kinds of things they have and trinkets they have that he collected over his time. But it's kind of like going to the Louvre. I mean, Louvre is a little more impressive, but there's like 5 stories and you only have time for one story, like, you know, one part of the building. So I probably would have gotten around to seeing the sash, but we didn't. We had like an hour or two. We only had about 2 hours. So I didn't see everything. I got to see his house. So they showed us inside the house that they were actually living and some of the museum pieces. And that was about it. Oh, something that I learned when I was there, the one huge thing I learned that I thought was really interesting was that Mount Vernon, and I posted this on Facebook, but not on the BRB. Mount Vernon was actually named after a British naval officer that saved his brother's life. His brother was in he was in this war of Jenkins War, which was between the Spanish and British, and the American colonies were involved in it too. And his brother served under this naval British officer that kind of kept him from getting hurt, but he served, you know, honorably, but obviously there was something there, and so he named it after Mount Vernon. He named Mount Vernon after this British naval officer, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, so any more questions? Okay then. All right, so I take it then, Jamie, that you're now on the way to collect the wreath.
Yes, I'm gonna do that.
Okay, what we'll do then, we'll pause it here, and when you're ready to lay the wreath, we'll resume.
Yeah, sure. Blue, red, blue. And so this is it. So this is what I got. So that's it. It kind of has a blue, red, blue feel. I was going to put in memoriam to Major General Edward Braddock and all this, but apparently words cost a lot of money. So, but they came up with this really nice idea. So these are like little ribbons, and it says BRB reorg, and then it says Coldstream Guards, in Noli Secundus. So it's a nice memorial to him. And we're gonna put it here. I think we could put it up, but I'm afraid it's not gonna. We're just gonna put it here. What'll happen is it'll be out here for probably a week or two. And then once it starts looking shabby, they'll probably take it down because it's not biodegradable. So these are like little silk flowers that actually, they look pretty. And so they're weather resistant. So it'll be a while, but there we go. Or we can actually this is to put it in the ground. You can actually put it in the ground. People on the highway can see it. It's supposed to just kind of go in here like this. There we go. Yeah, there we go. No, that'll be nice for a little bit. So that's about it.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Jason, I don't know if you want to say a few words, as obviously you're our Coldstreamer that's on tonight.
It's very interesting, Jamie. I never heard of him till you mentioned him.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't. A lot of Americans haven't either. So it's but history nuts will run across him. So he's still remembered.
I mean, there's that much in the history of the past that we don't know until you mention them. Do you know what I mean? Or people. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, we've all heard of George Washington, but I'd never heard of him, this gentleman. Braddock, do you know what I mean? Never heard of him. He wasn't taught in basic training, for want of a better word. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
History.
Yeah, that is one thing. He probably wasn't at the time. He probably wasn't. Obviously, they thought of him. They thought of him highly before he was defeated. They thought of him highly as somebody that could get the job done. But I think because it was a defeat, maybe the British leadership, they just kind of looked the other way, like, well, that didn't really work out very well. So maybe that's why, But it is a big deal. I mean, there were a lot of things, and probably they didn't realize what kind of impact he did make, like just little things. Well, he was the first commander-in-chief, and plus also he did cut down that road. So he did create the first road in America, which they may not have thought about, at the time. So then he's just kind of swept under the carpet over the pond, but people here still remember him for, a lot of the things that he did that were good. I mean, it wasn't all good, but there were some very, very important things that he did right. So that's good.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's just, all that time ago. Do you know what I mean? It's nice that he's remembered as well. It's nice that he's actually remembered somewhere.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why I'd like to write a book about him. I think that he is kind of becoming forgotten again, probably. And I'd like to write a book about him and kind of remind people about him, because it isn't the one thing that I found really interesting in all this, not just like the battle and everything, but he was very heroic and like during the battle, but also how the American generals treated his sash. It's very interesting, and can't think of the right word right now, but it's fascinating to me, the way they treated everything, and it's just fascinating, and it should be learned in schools, I think. Something else. I forgot to tell you guys is so back in Winchester, Virginia, where they started, there's a cannon there in memoriam to General Braddock. And on this website, this one website where I got a lot of this information, the guy said it's there and there's a memorial to it and there's a lot of information on it. It seems to have been forgotten. Like people just drive by it and there's not really a big plaque saying, hey, this is, you know, one of the cannons. So these cannons were left over. Braddock couldn't take all the cannons. He took a bunch of wagons and ammunition, but some of these cannons he couldn't take. So there are little towns in Virginia and Pennsylvania where they had these kind of memorials to Braddock with a cannon, like with this the cannons that were left behind.
British cannons.
So, yeah, and there's a one cannon that is a traffic circle, and that's one of the cannons that he had to leave behind because another thing is he didn't get the support that he should have. So there was a lot of things that were left behind that he couldn't bring.
Well, even back then, logistics was probably a problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Logistics
yeah, there was.
a problem.
Yeah, the logistics and all of it was a really big deal. So he had a lot that he had to deal with, and people just were not getting everything together fast enough. So he's like, you know what, we're leaving, we're just leaving. So yeah, a lot of things were left behind, and now they're kind of relics, and they're like on traffic circles, and back there in Winchester, Virginia. And there's like 2 other cannons in 2 other towns near here with one of the cannons that he couldn't take. Which is also kind of sad too. Like there's a lot of sad little things to the story.
I mean, how much, I mean, them cannons now that are on roundabouts and in certain towns, at least they're kept and maintained for historical value and they're not melted down or, do you know what I mean? So they're maintained and people can see them.
Yeah, true, they can see them. They can't see them. I think this blogger that had created this website, he's trying to say that, you know, people can see them, but there needs to be kind of like a rebirth about it and information put out about it to kind of, you know, restart the story and, you know, talk about it. So yeah, it's really interesting. They said that there's a cannon at a naval academy. One of his cannons is at the naval academy.
Perhaps somebody needs to write a book about it.
I think so. I think so. Because actually, I'll post this on Facebook. I can post it on the BRB webpage, Facebook page too. There are a lot of books about him, but not about him and the cannons that were left behind and the sash and the American generals and the president and all this other stuff. So I think a book putting those 2 together would be a better book. It'd be interesting. I think people would really find it fascinating. Yeah,
Well,
I'd love to write the book. I want to write a book about it.
You might be the person to do it, Jamie.
I think so. I'd love to do it. It'd be my first book. And I think that, you know, there's a lot to a book, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write the book because, you know, a lot of people think, oh, well, I got to write the book and then will people approve it to be published? Well, you can write a book and publish it, but I mean, maybe it won't, you know, there's like certain companies that might not, you know, say, oh, well, we'll publish your book or we'll, you know, generate copies for you. So technically anybody can write a book, and I have to think about that too. I don't have a lot of money to publish a book, but it's not about that. Like I had a friend, a JAG officer friend, who he wrote a book and he just he published it on Amazon. Amazon said, okay, no problem, we'll sell it for $2 and you have a book. And now he's a writer. He has a book that he published. It's about terrorism. It's actually about a virus that they drop on the United States. It's like measles or smallpox, and he wrote it like 5 or 6 years ago. So, and yeah, I mean, he's just like, you know, JAG officer, and he wrote a book, and now you can buy it on Amazon. So I think I'm kind of analyzing it too much, and I can write the book. If people read it, they read it. If they don't, they don't. I don't have to spend a lot of money on it, you know.
Could you publish it electronically, like on Kindle?
What's that?
On Kindle. Like
On
an
Kindle,
ebook?
probably so. So the good thing is there are a lot of other platforms you can go through now, get your book published, or for people to sell it. So it's not just like you're waiting on these huge companies to approve your book. So, you know, Kindle or Amazon. So I could, something I've been wanting to do with some of the genealogy research I've done is just like publish a small book on certain people's families and some of the stories that I found. And I think I could do that no problem. And I think I could do the same thing with the Braddock story. Just write it, and then people are gonna, you know, people are gonna read it, or they're gonna purchase it, or they're not. It's cool.
Only one way to find out, isn't there?
And you might find that the Coldstream Guards Association or something like that might be quite interested too.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe so. I mean, I didn't even think about your side of things and the fact that you guys would be interested in reading a book like that. And you know, maybe they might advertise it or something, because it's about them, really.
But of course, the marketing is secondary to the writing of the book, isn't it? It's write the book first and then see people about marketing it, really.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot into it, but I think instead of me just seeing all of these mountains to climb for the book, I think I'll just write it and we'll see what happens. And then maybe, you know, I can I'll look into how I'm gonna advertise it and stuff like that. It'll be out there, so then it would just be a matter of marketing it and getting people to read it.
Yes. Now just Google them.
Mhm.
There is a lot of information online about them.
You need
Yeah,
to
so
you need to speak to somebody who's got experience as a press officer.
Yeah.
yeah. Say that again.
You need to speak to somebody who's got experience as a press officer.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do. And I'm thinking about asking that JAG officer too, because I mean, he does have his book out. So I need to ask him how he did that. And yeah, find somebody that has done some work in writing. I have come across some Facebook pages where these writers explain to you how to get your book published and stuff. So I probably just need to do some research on it. What's interesting is, and I can send you guys a link. So there's one guy that talks about the sash, and he's done all this research. And it's if you Google French and Indian War Braddock sash, it'll probably come up first, because that's the one. There's not a whole lot on the sash. And what I found interesting about this guy is that he did all this research, and I mean, I got to confirm some of it. I got to confirm all of it, but he did all this research, and if you look at the way he wrote it, how he described it, it's just all jumbled. Like, he did this research, and then he just threw it on the internet, and that was it for him. He just wanted to put it out there, and you really gotta kind of untangle all of this information that he put out there and put it in order in a timeline. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but he's done half of it. The other half is writing it, and I guess he didn't want to write it because I don't see one.
Okay, so is there any more questions at all? Okay,
No.
well, right, Jamie. Well, thank you very much for that. That's absolutely fantastic. You've
Thank you.
done yourself proud there, and thank you very much for your time on this.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I had fun.
Jamie.
Okay.